Roll for Crit is made possible thanks to the support of viewers like you and our patrons on our Patreon page.
You can become a patron for just $1 a month at patreon.com/rollforcrit.
Hey there, and thanks for joining us on this Roll for Crit preview of Valda, The Rise of the Giants. This is an expansion for the game Valda, in which you are all playing as Vikings trying to ascend to godhood. In order to do so, you're going to have to collect worshippers and get some help from the other gods along the way. The main mechanics of this game will revolve around playing these cards either from the main deck or the god cards. Main action cards for you to play, attack cards, or defense cards. But the god decks usually have not only stronger versions of those cards, but each one has a weapon card that are really strong and can be played at any time. So those are definitely ones to hunt down. There are also going to be resources, divine blood, gold, and diamonds. Those will be gained from rolling dice during the resource phase. Those resources will be used to either build up your mines or drills to roll more dice and get more resources, or build temples to the gods. Each god has their own space where you can build temples to, and depending on the number of temples there, you'll not only get to draw cards from their deck, you also get special powers you'll see on your board. These will have different effects depending on the number of temples you have and will trigger in different phases. They may let you roll more dice to get followers or even get you draw more cards or get more resources. Be careful though, because on your turn, there's actually a phase in which each player gets a chance to attack you. They're going to play attack cards and you're going to have to decide whether their attack is worth defending. For if it goes through, they'll get to trigger different effects such as stealing a card you have or maybe some resources. And if you're playing with higher player counts, you're going to have to decide which attacks are worth to go through and which ones are worth spending your limited defense cards on in order to make sure they don't get an attack in. You're going to continue this for 6 rounds. At the end of that, you're going to look at who has the most followers, and whoever has the most is the one who gets the right to ascend to godhood.
With the new Rise of Giants expansion, things get shaken up a little bit. First off, all those gods on the board now have the potential to be replaced with giants. So there are a few different methods as to how you determine which ones are replaced and which ones aren't. You could play with a mix of both gods and giants, but any ones that are replaced have a whole new section of board put on top of them, and they have their own special powers. They work in essentially the same way as the gods did, in that you will be building temples there and receiving cards from their deck, but they have new types of cards, new powers and abilities that you can get access to, such as different ways allowing you to reroll dice or letting you gain followers in new ways. For instance, a lot of them have to deal with runes, which is a new resource type. Runes you can trade in for resources during your turn, or you can save them up, and if you have the right gods, you might be able to use them to get followers. The other big change in Rise of the Giants is the player board itself. They have condensed 2 of the phases of your turn into 1. So you will now be taking actions and building all in the same section of your turn. You will have some tokens to allow you to remember exactly which ones you've done and which ones you haven't, depending on how many you're allowed to do. There may even be ways for you to swap one for the other if you have the right giant abilities. And the resource phase has been moved from the beginning of your turn all the way to the end of your turn. So that will change a little bit your mindset as to how and when you get resources and how that affects you. You can also take a look at the decks, the main card decks that everyone is drawing from during the game. In the original, there was just one. They have now split that up into 2 separate piles, one with the basic yellow cards and one with all the attack and defense cards. And you can choose to draw from either on your turn, and depending on what scenarios come up. So you can decide that you want to guarantee to maybe get some decent attack or defense cards, or you just want some more actions you can take on your turn. Gives you a little bit more agency in how you play the game.
First of all, let's look at the big component that's actually named the Giants. The Giants are very interesting, and it's fun because it's not like, oh, you should just go all Giants or all gods, because some of them we really love the interactions with. For example, the god, I'm probably mispronouncing names here, but I believe it's Kari, has a really fun ability to actually interact with the god Loki, because she involves re-rolling dice and making the white die, which usually is used to roll to help gain followers. It does have one that makes you lose one. She can negate that ability, and Loki, well, lets you gain followers with that die. So they seem to work very well hand in hand, meaning you can do all kinds of fun, weird combinations. But it's almost the other rules that I really like about this, because the splitting of the deck turns out to be really nice because you can choose which deck to draw from. You can't go back and forth. So like if you get a draw 2, you either have to draw all in on the main or the attack deck. But we had a game in just the base core where I don't know how it happened, but I would only draw the main yellow cards, while Jonathan only drew attack and defense cards. So during his main action, he'd just be like, I'll play one and mostly just do the action of get one resource. While the attack action, he's like, I'm attacking you with all these. I'm like, well, I can't do anything about it. So now that it was split, we felt there's much more like, what do I need? I can get the cards I need. So there was a bit more of a balance there.
I think that both that and the way they messed around with the turn order, your player's turn, are both like they're subtle changes, but they seem like after the fact kind of no-brainer things that just pretty much strictly improve the game, I think. Moving resources to the end of your turn is interesting. I don't know how much it really affects the overall balance of the game, but it does change the way you look at it, and like in between turns, what things are happening, because you're looking at other players and now you can see all the resources they have prepped. It's much more of a visual thing of knowing how far advanced they are right now in the game, as opposed to maybe you're not paying attention to that because their board's empty because they spent all those already. And it's just also a little bit of a simplification. It's, I think, a little nicer for newer players to see, oh, there are 4 steps of my turn instead of 5, and you're still kind of doing all the same things, but it seems a little more elegant. It feels a little better condensed that way, I think.
Ironically, I think it also helps the advanced players on it. In particular, for example, one of the gods, I'm blanking on which one it is. I think it's Ymir. But the first phase gives you 2 building actions and 3 actions for you to do. And he's all about you now allowing to swap the 2. So if you really want a large building turn, you can do it. Or if you wanted to do more actions, you can do it. And it allows for these really much more, I think, complicated plays. So ironically, it simplifies it, but also allows for them to do more weird things. Also, because having resource at the end, now you can do more attacks about stealing resources because someone isn't just going to spend them all away. You roll your dice at the end, and you're either A, you hope someone doesn't attack you to steal them, or as we found out with Hell, there's an attack card that is spend Divine Blood, and for each one you do, take out a follower, which could be devastating.
Yeah, there are a lot more possible combos now with all the different giants and gods and how you mix them. There is even a mode where each player decides which side of the card to use, whether you make a certain space, the gods or a giants, during the game. So you won't even know exactly which way it's going to go until like whoever's first to build a temple there. So there's a lot of possibilities there. And so even though this is essentially not adding too much to the game, it does almost really double the possibilities because you have twice as many new powers to play with, and you can mix and match them in all kinds of different ways. So I guess mathematically, it probably more than doubles. There's if you count out all the permutations and everything. But it adds a lot of stuff like that, and also I think just some, like we said, quality of life changes. Even just having those tokens is nice because it's a way for you to refresh your memory. You don't have to keep in your head which actions you've done or haven't done. So a small thing, but some good stuff if you enjoyed the original. There is another expansion that's a part of this Kickstarter, which is called Ragnarok. We didn't get the chance to try out any version of this one, but it includes new cards and the ability to actually attack gods or giants and kill them. So if you're a God of War fan, that's the kind of thing you're into. You might want to look at that one too. I think it's a slightly smaller expansion than the Rise of the Giants one, but 2 interesting ones I think to look at nonetheless.
You can check out all these on the Kickstarter page now. Like we said, with this expansion, it not only adds a lot of weird ways to vary your game between gods and giants, but a lot of rules changes that should be great for newcomers and veterans alike. So check out the Kickstarter now and tell us if this is a game, or just an expansion if you already have the game, that you're thinking of backing.
Yeah, talk to us in the comments down below. We'd love to hear from you. This has been our preview of Valda, Rise of the Giants. It's on Kickstarter now. My name is Jonathan.
I'm Will.
This was Roll for Crit.
Never miss out by liking and subscribing, and you can also check out more on our Patreon.
We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so follow us there.